We are back with part 2 of this week's reading of the Messianic Jewish Family Bible Tree of Life version, TLV. And this week we are reading chapters 11 through 21 of Judges, and we'll be actually wrapping up Judges tonight. So we're going to start with chapter 13, and actually chapter 13, chapter 14, chapter 15 all deals with Samson. So we're going to actually dig into the story of Samson, and also we need to not forget Delilah. And there was a film, a Hollywood film actually, years ago, um, Samson and Delilah. It's still a pretty relevant story, and that was back in the days where Hollywood actually did a pretty decent job with biblical stories. And if you ever get a chance, it's old cinema. I mean, it's not like what we have today, but it's very well done. But anyway, we're going to go on to chapter 13, the birth of Samson. Benaiah Israel again did what was evil in Adonai's eyes, and Adonai gave them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. Now there was a certain man from Zorah, from a Danite clan, whose name was Manoah. His wife was barren and bore no children. Then the angel of Adonai appeared to the woman and said to her, Behold now, you are barren and have no born children, but you will conceive and bear a son. Now therefore be careful not to drink wine or strong drink, or eat any unclean thing. For behold, you will conceive and bear a son. Let no razor come upon his head, for the boy will be a Nazarite to God from the womb. He will begin to deliver Israel from the hand of the Philistine. Then the woman came and told her husband, saying, A man of God came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of an angel of God, very awesome. But I did not ask him where he was from, nor did he tell me his name. He said to me, Behold, you will conceive and bear a son. So drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean, for the child will be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. Then Manoah entreated Adonai and said, My Lord, please let the man of God whom you have sent come to us again and teach us what we will do for the boy to be born. God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman as she was sitting in the field, but her husband Manoah was not with her. So the woman ran quickly and told her husband and said to him, Look, the man that came to me the other day has appeared to me. So Manoah got up and followed his wife. When he came to the man, he asked him, Are you the one who spoke to the woman? I am, he said. Then Manoah said, Now may your words come about. What will be the child's rule and his mission? The angel of Adonai said to Manoah, Let the woman abstain from all that I mentioned to her. She should not eat anything that comes from the grapevine, or drink wine, or strong drink, or eat any unclean thing. She must observe all that I commanded her. Then Manoah said to the angel of Adonai, Please let us detain you, so that we may prepare a young goat for you. But the angel of Adonai said to Manoah, If you could detain me, I would not eat your food. But if you present a burnt offering, then offer it to Adonai. But Manoah did not realize that he was the angel of Adonai. Then Manoah asked the angel of Adonai, What is your name? So that when your words come to pass, we may honor you. But the angel of Adonai said to him, Why do you ask for my name? Is it wonderful? Manoah took the young goat with the meal offering and offered them on the rock to Adonai, and he did something wonderful as Manoah and his wife were watching. For it came about when the flame went up from off the altar toward heaven that the angel of Adonai ascended in the flame of the altar. Manoah and his wife were looking on. Then they fell on their faces to the ground. But the angel of Adonai appeared no more to Manoah or to his wife. Then Manoah realized that he was the angel of Adonai. Manoah said to his wife, "We will surely die because we have seen God." But his wife said to him, "If Adonai had desired to kill us, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and a meal offering from our hand, nor would he have shown us all these things, or let us hear such things as these at this time." Then the woman bore a son and called his name Samson. So the boy grew up, and Adonai blessed him. The Ruach Adonai began to stir him in Mahane Dan, between Zorah and Eshtaol. Now, there's a footnote from Luke chapter 1:13, and also Luke 1 chapter 15 in reference to um, actually Manoah and his wife being told about the birth that she would bear a son, um, and also actually looking forward here in the book of Luke, how Zechariah and Elizabeth were told in chapter 1 of Luke, verses 13. But the angel said, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah, because your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will give birth to your son, and you will name him John." And then 15, he will not, I'm sorry, he will be great before Adonai, and he should not drink wine and intoxicating beverage, but he will be filled with a Ruach HaKodesh just out of his mother's womb. So there's a comparison here where it's being said that no, actually Samson is not to be doing these things, drinking intoxicating beverage and wine, and actually his mother is being told while during her pregnancy she's not supposed to be eating unclean things and having strong drink and wine or anything from the grapes from the vine as well. So there's that comparison there. So that is chapter 13. So we're going to continue now. Samson is born. He is grown up. He is blessed, and the Ruach Adonai began to stir in him. So he had the Spirit of God in him as well. And so we're going to now talk about the riddle of the lion. And that is chapter 14. Then Samson went down to Timnah and eyed in Timnah a woman, one of the daughters of the Philistines. So he came back and told his father and mother, saying, "I have seen a woman in Timnah, one of the daughters of the Philistines. So now get her for me as a wife." Then his father and mother said to him, "Is there no woman among the daughters of your kinsmen or among all our people that you are going to take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines?" And again, that was something that wasn't supposed to be happening either, because Adonai had told Bnei Israel not to mingle with outside of Bnei Israel. But Samson said to his father, "Get her for me, for she is the right one in my eyes." But his father and mother did not know that it was Adonai, for he was seeking a pretext against the Philistines. So this was Adonai's plan as well. For at that time the Philistines were ruling over Israel. While his father and mother went down to Timnah, Samson went to the vineyards of Timnah, and behold, a young lion came roaring at him. Then the Ruach Adonai came mightily upon him, and he tore him apart as one would have split a young goat, yet he had nothing in his hand. But he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. So he went down and talked with the woman, and she looked right in Samson's eyes. After a while he returned to get her, but turned aside to look at the carcass of the lion, and behold, there was a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of the lion. So he scraped it in his hands and went on, eating as he went. Now when he came to his father and mother, he gave some to them, and they ate it, though he did not tell them that he had scraped the honey from the carcass of the lion. Then his father went down to the woman, and Samson made a banquet there, for so the young men used to do. Now it came to pass when they saw him, they brought 30 companions to be with them. Then Samson said to them, "Let me now propose a riddle to you. If you can indeed solve it for me during the 7 days of the banquet and figure it out, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. But if you cannot solve it for me, then you must give me 30 garments and 30 changes of clothes. Propose your riddle," they said to him. "Let's hear it." So he said to them, "Out of the eater came forth food, out of the strong came forth sweet." But for 3 days they could not solve the riddle. Now on the seventh day they said to Samson's wife, "Coax your husband so that he will explain the riddle to us, or else we will burn you and your father's house with fire." So they actually threatened his wife, that they would burn down her house, her father's house, she and her father's house, with them in it. "Have you invited us to impoverish us?" So Samson's wife wept before him and said, "You only hate me, you don't love me. You proposed a riddle to the sons of my people, yet you haven't explained it to me." "Look," he said, "I haven't explained it to my father or my mother, so should I explain it to you?" But she wept before him the 7 days while their banquet lasted. So it was on the seventh day he told her, because she nagged him. Then she told the riddle to the sons of her people. So the men of the city said to him on the seventh day before the sun went down, "What is sweeter than honey? And what is stronger than a lion?" But he responded to them, "If you hadn't plowed with my heifer, you wouldn't have solved my riddle." Then the Ruach Adonai came mightily upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon and killed 30 of their men, took their spoil, and gave the changes of clothes to those who solved the riddle. Since his rage was burning, he went up to his father's house, but Samson's wife was given to his companion, who had been his best man. So a lot happened there. Chapter 15, Victory with a Jawbone. But after a while, during the time of wheat harvest, Samson visited his wife with a young goat. "I'm going to my wife in her room," he said, but her father would not let him enter. "I thought for sure you had utterly hated her," her father said, "so I gave her to your best man, her younger sister. Isn't she better than her? Please let her be yours instead." Then Samson said to them, "This time I am blameless from the Philistines when I do harm to them." So Samson went and caught 300 foxes and took torches, turned the foxes tail to tail, and put one torch between every two tails. Then he set fire to the torches and released them into the standing grain of the Philistines. Then he burned up both the stacks and the standing grain, along with vineyards and olive trees. Then the Philistines asked, "Who did this thing?" They were told, "Samson, son-in-law of the Timnite, because he took his wife and gave her to his best man." So the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. Then Samson said to them, "Since you have acted like this, surely I will take revenge on you. After that, I will quit." So he struck them leg upon thigh with a great slaughter. Then he went down and stayed in the cleft of the rock of Edom. That's Etam. Then the Philistines went up and camped in Judah and spread out in Lehi. The men of Judah asked, "Why have you marched against us?" They replied, "We have come to arrest Samson, to do to him as he did to us." Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock of Etam and said to Samson, "Don't you realize that the Philistines are ruling over us? So what is this that you have done to us?" He said to them, "As they did to me, so I have done to them." "We have come down to bind you," they said to him, "so that we may hand you over to the Philistines." So Samson said to them, "Swear to me that you yourselves won't kill me." "No, we won't kill you," they said to him, "but we will bind you fast and hand you over to them." So they bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. When he arrived at Lehi, the Philistines shouted upon meeting him, but the Ruach Adonai came mightily upon him, so that the ropes that were on his arms became like flax burnt with fire, and his bonds melted off his wrists. Then he found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, reached out and took it, and killed 1,000 men with it. Then Samson said, "With the jawbone of a donkey, a heap, 2 heaps, with the jawbone of a donkey, I struck down 1,000 men." As soon as he had finished speaking, he threw the jawbone from his hand. Then he named that place Ramat Lehi. Then he became very thirsty, so he called to Adonai and said, "You have granted this great deliverance by the hand of your servant. So now will I die of thirst and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised?" But God split the hollow place that is in Lehi, and water came out of it. When he drank, he regained his strength and revived. Therefore he called it En Hakor. That's En-Hakkore, which is in Lehi to this day. Then he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines for 20 years. Chapter 16. Delilah betrays Samson. Once Samson went to Gaza and eyed a prostitute there, so he went to her. The Gazites were told, "Samson has come here." So they surrounded him, lay in ambush for him all night at the gate of the city, and kept quiet all night, saying, "When morning light comes, then we will kill him." But Samson lay in bed till midnight, got up at midnight, grabbed the doors of the city gate along with the 2 gateposts, and pulled them up, bar and all. Then he put them on his shoulder and carried them up to the top of the mountain that is near Hebron. It came about afterward that he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. So the Philistine lords came up to her and said to her, "Coax him, see where his great strength comes from, and by what we may overpower him, so we may bind him to subdue him. Then will each of us give you 1,100 pieces of silver." So here we go, betrayal for silver again, and that's a type and shadow um, to which you'll see in the Brit Kadashah with Yeshua. So Delilah said to Samson, "Tell me, please, where does your great strength come from? How could you be bound? How could you be bound to subdue you?" Samson said to her, "If they bind me with 7 fresh cords that have never been dried, then I would be weak and be like any other man." So the Philistine lords brought up to her 7 fresh cords that had never been dried, and she bound him with them while an ambush was waiting in an inner room. "The Philistines are upon you, Samson," she said, but he broke the cords just as a strand of straw snaps when it touches fire, so his strength remained unknown. Delilah said to Samson, "Oh, you deceived me. You lied to me. Now tell me, please, how you can be bound." He told her, "If they only bind me with new ropes never used for work, then I will be weak and be like any other man." So Delilah took new ropes, tied him up with them, and said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." Yet while the ambush was waiting in the inner room, he snapped them from his arm like a thread. So Delilah said to Samson, "Up to now you've mocked me and told me lies. Tell me how you can be bound." He told her, "If you weave the 7 locks of my head with the web of a loom." So she pinned it with a pin and said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." But he woke from his sleep and pulled away the pin of the loom and the web. "How can you say I love you," she said to him, "when your heart is not with me? This is 3 times you've deceived me and not told me where your great strength comes from." Now it came about when she nagged him daily with her speeches and kept bothering him, his soul was annoyed to death. So he divulged to her all his heart and said to her, "No razor has ever been upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If I am shaved, then my strength will go from me, and I will be weak and be like any other man." Now when Delilah realized that he had confided to her all his heart, she sent and called for the Philistine lords, saying, "Come up this time, for he has told me all his heart." So the Philistine lords came up to her and brought the silver in their hand. And she made him sleep upon her knees, and she called for a man and had the 7 locks of his head shaved off. She even began to humiliate him while his strength departed from him. The Ruach was departing from him, actually. Then she said, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." When he awoke from his sleep, he thought, "I'll go out as at other times and shake myself off." He did not comprehend that Adonai had departed from him. Then the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes. They brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze chains, and he became a grinder in the prison. However, the hair of his head began to grow again after it was shaved off. And the last part of this is Samson avenged. Now the Philistine lords gathered to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and to celebrate, as they said, "Our God has given our enemy Samson into our hands." Now Dagon is a pagan god. It was a god of the Philistines. Um, and that's who they worship. And that is definitely idolatry. And so this was Dagon, their god. And when the people saw him, they praised their God, as they said, "Our God has given into our hand our enemy and the destroyer of our country, who has slain many of us." Now it came about, when their hearts were merry, that they said, "Call for Samson, that he may amuse us." So they called for Samson from the prison, and he did make them laugh when they had made him to stand between the pillars. And Samson said to the lad that held him by the hand, "Let me feel the pillars on which the temple rests, so I may lean on them." Now the temple was full of men and women. All the Philistine lords were there, and about 3,000 men and women on the roof looking on while Samson was amusing them. Then Samson called out to Adonai and said, "My Lord Adonai, please remember me and please strengthen me only this once, O God, so that I may this once take revenge on the Philistines for my two eyes." Then Samson grasped the two middle pillars on which the temple rested and leaned on them, one with his right hand and the other with his left. Then Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." He bent with all his might, so that the temple fell on the lords and all the people who were in it. So the dead whom he killed at his death were more than those whom he killed during his life. Then his kinsmen and all his father's household came down, lifted him, brought him up, and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of his father Manoah, for he had judged Israel 20 years. So that's the end of the story of Samson. I'm going to recap this real quick before we go into chapter 17. So Samson, his strength, was taken from him when his hair was cut. Because remember, as a Nazarite, no razor was to touch his hair. So when we get into the opening chapters 13 through 16 actually tells of the judge Samson, the deliverer. Um, we see that the children of Israel had once again done evil. Oh, and I'm going to pause this and come back. I'm almost at 24 minutes, and I don't think that's going to hold. Okay, we'll be back with part 3.